I would like to invite Yang Berhormat Nik Nazmi bin Nik Ahmad, Minister of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability, to deliver the keynote address entitled Small Step, Big Impacts, Greening the Grassroots, Empowering SMEs for Sustainable Transformation, followed by the Q&A session at the end of the speech.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, salam Malaysia Madani. A very good morning, Yang berbahagia Datuk Yo Su Min, Mr. Kabanesh Aliathambi, Board of Directors of MIM, distinguished panelists, speakers, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, it's my pleasure to be speaking at the Malaysia Institute of Management's ESG conference with the theme of Shared Responsibility, Shared Future, Uniting Stakeholders to Co-Create a Greener Malaysia. It's quite a mouthful. This event, organized in collaboration with Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, CAS Malaysia, is a welcome addition to the many conferences that is now being organized on and in support of our sustainability journey. This conference, as I understand it, seeks to delve into a crucial aspect of sustainable transformation, which is small steps, big impact, greening the grassroots, to empower SMEs for sustainable transformation. This is very crucial because SMEs form the backbone of our economy. If it is the MNCs and the GLCs alone that are embracing sustainability, it is not enough. It has to be carried through by the SMEs to ensure that we can see a meaningful change. And I think that your potential as SMEs to drive sustainable practices remains largely untapped. With the heavy responsibility as the Minister of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability, I have the privilege of leading transformative initiatives aimed at preserving our biodiversity and managing plastic pollution on a global scale. Earlier this year, we took proactive steps at the 4th Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee in Ottawa, Canada, advocating for an international legally binding instrument on plastic pollution. This underscores our commitment to combating marine plastic pollution while promoting sustainable economic development. And this is a big step as we are an oil and gas economy with a huge petrochemical industry that is producing plastics. We have also revised our national biodiversity policy to align with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, which was agreed upon in 2022. And this framework aims to halt and reverse biodiversity loss, reflecting our dedication to conserving our rich natural heritage for future generations. We tend to forget that Malaysia is one of the 17 mega diverse countries in the world. And it is significant. It's something that we should be proud of. Yeah, we are proud of our food. And now we are ranked as among the most obese in Southeast Asia. But here we have something that we are mega diverse, and the other countries that are that fall under that category are the United States, Brazil, Australia, China, India, Russia, countries, Indonesia, which are larger than us. We are a small country, but the mega biodiversity that we have can match those countries. And I think that is something that we have to protect at all costs. And we are also it's not only serving our needs as Malaysians, it's also providing a service to the world as a carbon sink, as providing and promoting a sustainable environment. Ladies and gentlemen, we have various plans that we have announced, partly has been mentioned just now, and the buy-in and support of the private sector, particularly the SMEs, which make up 97% of the total businesses in Malaysia, is crucial. And I can say that our green transition will not succeed unless SMEs are involved and can take advantage of the various opportunities that it presents. Whenever we hear the word sustainability, ESG, SDGs, I recognize that many in the corporate sector, in the private sector, see this as costs. Sometimes those in the government sector also see that these are costs. So what do? They just tick the box so that they can meet whatever minimum requirement that is needed without totally understanding why we need to do this. It can be costly and complicated. Even for the biggest businesses, it is tough. What more for the SMEs? But we need to do this, and we need to embark on this journey together. We like to say, or we hear campaigns telling people to use less plastic, or to eat less meat, or to even travel less, take the flights less, and all that in order to save the environment. But at the end of the day, if the governments and the businesses do not make the systemic changes that are required, then all of those private, personal initiatives will not succeed. So I think that is something that we have to recognize. And at the end of the day, all that I can say is, if there is no planet left, then there's no business to be done. It's as simple as that. If we recognize that, and now that people are looking beyond, your quarters and your financial year ends and whatnot, it is crucial to look at that long-term horizon. What sort of planet are we leaving behind to our children? The other part is that you believe, one is that you can be like Donald Trump and deny that there is climate change, or you can think that there is climate change but nothing can be done about it, and we might as well proceed with business as usual. But both are mistaken. Something can be done, but the window to act is closing, and we have to seize the day and do it now. So human capital and capacity for sustainability is something that must be looked at, especially at the SME level. The human element will always be important, even in this age of AI and high technology. We are going to be chair of ASEAN in 2025, so we must take a leadership role in the region to show what can be done with our businesses and what we can show to our neighbors with regards to sustainability and also a just transition. Because at the end of the day, we know that ASEAN is going to be a force to be reckoned with. By 2030, we will be the 4th largest economy in the world. At this point, we have 670 million people in ASEAN. If we talk about Malaysia on our own, I think a lot of people may not notice, because we are relatively small in the big scheme of things. But if we come in as ASEAN, then we can really punch above our weight. And with the leadership that we have, with our Prime Minister, Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim, I think this is the right time for us to be leading ASEAN. So I trust that MIM, and with your immense contribution, not just to the country, but also to our ASEAN member states and beyond, we can achieve these goals. So as we discuss with regards to empowering SMEs for sustainable transformation, I would like to again reiterate, environmental sustainability is not a choice, but it is a responsibility that we owe to our planet and future generations. One of the biggest, or one of the major critiques that I have is my own son, because whenever he sees trees being cleared, whenever he sees that I pick up plastic bottles at the shop, he will be the first to remind me that, Abah, you're not doing your job as the environment minister. And I think the younger generation are very much aware, right? It is us, the older generation, that have to play our part and to ensure that we can leave behind a planet for them that is worth saving. We have tried our best at the government level. We have the NIMP, New Industrial Master Plan. We have the National Energy Transition Roadmap. And recently at the Climate Action Council meeting, it was decided, maybe not many recognize, before this, our net zero goals were as early as 2050. I like to say that as if when you go to your mom and say that, when your mom asks you, when are you going to get married? And you tell your mom, as early as I'm 30. And that doesn't really mean much. But here we are telling the public that we will go for net zero 2050 full stop. It is a lot of work. It will require a lot of changes to our policies. We've started with retargeting electric subsidies, the controversial diesel subsidies, but I think what is clear is that the government will not shy away. We have to make these difficult decisions if we are to achieve those goals. So I think that is what we are trying to play on our part, but we also have, I know a lot of SMEs will be asking, what about incentives, what about tax breaks? And we have that through the GITA, GITE, and all those things, right? But at the same time, we have to address the blanket subsidies. So that is being done right now. And I think now I've seen a lot of immense work being done by many SMEs. And I know that it's not an easy task, and I would like to congratulate the SMEs for your green transformation. And now we need to accelerate. We need to share these best practices with other SMEs and to show that it can indeed be done. We need to be that beacon. Malaysia wants to be that beacon of high ambition with regards to our climate and environmental policies. We cannot afford to continue just being the lowest common denominator with regards to that. So, in closing, I extend my sincere gratitude to the Malaysian Institute of Management for initiating this important conference. So, although I was not able to make it last year, so I'm here this year to attend this conference. And I would like to thank everyone for your time and also active participation. Your dedication and commitment to sustainability inspires us all to strive for a future where economic prosperity goes hand in hand with environmental stewardship. And I'm confident that through collaborative efforts with the MIM, we can all pave the way for a greener and more prosperous Malaysia. Thank you.
Yang Berhormat, appreciate if you could proceed to sit on the stage for us to continue with the Q&A session. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite Associate Professor Ganesh Nadaraja, Director of MBA and External Engagement, Nottingham University Business School, to be with Yang Berhormat for the Q&A session.
Good morning, YB, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for a very inspiring speech this morning, and I would like to welcome everyone to this pivotal session on shared responsibility, shared future. Today we have the honor of hearing from the Honorable Minister, Minister of Natural Resources and Environment, and specific steps that the government and especially his ministry is empowering the industry, the people, and challenging the economy to transform sustainably. I got a few questions here that I would like to put forth to YB, and I'm also waiting for questions from the audience. So please do the scan, I think it's in the backdrop, and I will ask those questions to the YB, and in the meanwhile, let me get the ball rolling. So YB, first I would like to thank you for pointing out that the next generation, especially our children, seem to have a bit more responsibility in some of this aspect. So perhaps the first question I would ask is that, even in my own life, I see my son and his friends, taking a lot more bolder steps in putting across changes in their lifestyle that shows that there is a significant amount of awareness in the younger generation that perhaps may be lacking in other generations. What steps is your ministry taking in order for us to create a greater awareness through the education system?
Thank you. I think I agree that when we talk about awareness, there may be different levels of awareness at different schools, different districts, different parts of the country. I think that we understand that. Overall, I would say that the younger generation is far more aware than our generation with regards to the environment. So what we do is, there are various platforms that we are already using. We have, through the Rakan Muda, Rakan Bumi, Rakan Alam Sekitar. Those are things that we are already leveraging on. There are environmental clubs in schools. At the same time, we have this consultative panel on climate change, which I chair, and which consists of NGOs, various NGOs. Some of them are quite critical, and I remember when we invited them, they asked us to confirm that they can still criticize the government when they are part of the panel, and I said that's not an issue. But we also, within that, we have a youth cluster. So this youth cluster consists of those who are under 30. Our target is 18 to 30, because we understand that their concerns may be a bit more different than us, right? And they're looking at their future. And I try my best whenever there's an I've been, in the past 1 month, I've been in University of Malaysia Terengganu, I've been in USM, Penang, I've been in, various other schools, the education department in Kedah, basically even in madrasas, right? So my approach is basically to engage as much as possible with the younger generation. And I think that's what we are doing. And yes, I think we are looking, part of it is there, but I agree that it may not be enough to embed environmental, elements in the curriculum. So we are not talking about having another subject, because I think that's not the solution. What we need to do is actually to embed it. If you learn science, because it's already there, but I think we need to highlight more about why is biodiversity important, why we need to address climate change. But it can also be in other subjects, even when we talk about history, when we talk about languages, so on and so forth. So I think that is what we are trying to do, so that it's sort of embedded across whatever subject you take in school, you will encounter that. That I think is the idea.
I think that's very meaningful, because you talked about actual connectivity with students, inspiring them. You talked about activity and finally anchoring it that in the development of the curriculum itself. So that's very good. I got many questions coming up, YB, so let me then shoot them away. First question, how is the progress of educating the older generation so far in ESG, since now we've been talking about children? What are the plans in place or ongoing?
The cliche is that whole of nation approach thing, but it is true where we need to do that. Recently, we had the heat waves. And these are things that we used to take for granted in Malaysia. I remember when I was young, we would go cycling in the middle of the day, and no one really, maybe my mom wasn't happy, but we wouldn't stop from doing it. But last year, we had at least 2 deaths. One infant or toddler, and one was slightly bigger kid. And this year we had 3, as far as I know. And there may be more, because sometimes it's not detected as heat-related, but it is. So, and during the Hajj season in the Holy Land, we had over nearly 1,500 people who were detected as been dying from heat-related illnesses. And again, most of them are those who did not register properly, and they were walking a lot under the sun, right? So I think what we are doing is that now, for example, that example, we are using it to put it in Friday prayer sermons, so that people understand that the world is changing and we need to take care of our health. There's this excellent book which I would recommend all of you to read, i.e. Breathe by Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London. And he's slightly older than me. When he first became mayor, he was challenged or dared to run in a marathon, the London Marathon, and he's never run long distance before. So he joined, he trained, he found it fun, and he finished the marathon. But he developed adult onset asthma because of the air pollution there. And let's face it, it's not just London. Most cities, including KL, if you speak to doctors, they say you find a lot of cases. People who've never had asthma, they move to KL and then suddenly they have asthma, right? So, and there's a case, I think 9-year-old girl in London, the mother fought hard for the girl's cause of death to be attributed to air pollution, and they succeeded. So he then started this whole thing about ultra-low emission zones. So I think this is another part where we talk about the environment, we need to link it to health. Sometimes when we just talk about climate change, it seems distant, although it's already happening, and the 1.5 degrees and all that. But that may, we are like frogs being boiled, and we don't realize that. But when we talk about cancer, coronary diseases, and all that, that comes from air pollution, for example, or water pollution, then that's something that is more tangible. Even COVID, for example, is attributed to closer human-wildlife conflict because, the pathogens were never exposed before. So I think that is another angle because we need to link it to what people can relate to, if it's health. Secondly, cost of living. Now, because of climate change, food prices are getting more expensive. Right? I think these are things that we need to engage with the older generation so that they can understand and they can relate because it was never like this before, right? When they were growing up. So I think that is where the battle is in order to create greater awareness among the older generation.
Switching gears a bit, this focuses a bit more on policy. So the question comes from this gentleman called Joseph. Is there any mandate on developers to cater for the green factor in their projects? This could be a potential leading cause of environment issues stirred by land clearance and also through pollution.
Well, there is, but I think we can go even further to make it better. There was a study recently where when they looked at the temperatures around Kampung Baru, right, in the middle of KL. And we know Kampung Baru is surrounded by KL Tower and all the skyscrapers. And you just go I don't know how many kilometers away to Gombak at the Orang Asli hospital. And that's very cool, very green. It can be the difference can be as great as 6 degrees Celsius. Right? A whole 6 degrees Celsius within not far, but because that's green, and here you have a built-up environment. But even within KL, they were looking at between Bukit Bintang, which is pretty much built up, and KLCC, which has a park in the middle, the difference can be about 2 degrees Celsius. So I think that is where the urban heat island effect is very real. And you've seen like Medellin in Colombia, they've created these green corridors, and I think they've managed to lower the temperature by so many degrees. So this is where we need to look at, because the way we design our cities, it's so car-centric, right? Maybe because we have Proton, I don't know. But we have always been, since the 1980s, everything has been about cars. We build more highways, it doesn't solve our traffic jams. Within a few years, it'll get jammed again. So I think that's where we need to change the mindset, right? So I think moving away from car centricity is very crucial. KL, they started with 3 or 4 hours car-free mornings every Sunday. Malacca has started with 54-hour car-free weekend. I don't know any of you realize that, in the middle of the historical city. And I congratulate the Chief Minister for daring to do that, because that caused a lot of protests, right? But I think that's something, a different alternative. And when I ran in KL during the car-free morning, you can see a different KL, because kids were riding their bikes, using their scooters, and we were cycling in the middle of the road, and it was safe, right? If we can just have more of that, that would make really a real difference. In terms of policy, we are working, we hoping to, like with KL, they have their carbon, they want to be, carbon neutral by 2030, right? Or carbon, low carbon city by 2030. And we are trying to look at how that can be achieved. KL has taken Wangsa Maju as sort of a micro experiment, and I've also created this thing called Eco City Wangsa, because it's under my constituency and it overlaps with Wangsa Maju. So we are trying to do things at a more practical basis and show and illustrate how that can later be related to policies, like making more walkability, and also built environment has to be friendlier towards reducing the urban heat island effect, so on and so forth.
Thank you. And obviously, it has to be an integrated approach in all aspects of looking into this problem. Maybe there is a very interesting question. It's a bit controversial, but I think you are more than capable of responding to this. How can we address the issue of big companies in the timber industry being certified as sustainable or being very sustainable, but some of the practices may not be really aligned with sustainability?
Well, the concerns about greenwashing, I share your concern. I think that is where, I think we have to recognize that we need a just transition, right? I think we did recognize Tun Musa Hitam, I think it was the 1970s or 1970s, he made this controversial statement in Parliament that the state governments are allowing our forests to be raped. That's what he said, right? And I think he said it in Malay, which sounds stronger. We recognize that, that's been done in the past, and now we're looking at how do we conserve. There is, in the timber industry, they have a forest management certificate. A lot of states have it, but when the audit was done and there were no compliance, for example, in Kelantan, they changed permanent forest reserves into forest plantations and even rubber plantations, then the certificate was taken away. So I would say that, we don't take it lightly. Not anyone can just claim that. Whether it can be made more stringent and all that, we should explore. But I think, we have to be fair, because even for the timber industry, a lot of them were, trying their best to play ball. In 2005, I think EU came up with some regulation, and they were working hard, and 10 years, 15 years later, as a lot of them have complied, now suddenly we have EUDR, right? So it's like moving the goalposts, and it's not cheap and it's not easy for us to do that. Palm oil, right? There's so much bad press with palm oil, but palm oil is the most efficient vegetable fuel out there. So I think that is where we also need to be very careful. But I'm not being apologetic if if they make any mistakes, if they are greenwashing, then they should be punished, right? But we are trying our best to make sure that I think most of our palm oil plantations now are trying to meet the sustainable palm oil standards. We have put a cap towards new palm oil. So timber as well, we put a heavy requirement on them, and because basically, if they don't comply, they will lose access to a lot of markets. But we welcome. I get a lot of feedback from NGOs. A lot of them are very critical. And for us, we want to maintain this open communication with them, because I do recognize that sometimes all the official reports always tend to sound perfect, right? And we cannot take it at face value. It's a journey, yeah.
This is my own question, YB. This is a topic that really concerns me, and it's an interest of me. The current government is spending and investing considerable amount of efforts in terms of enhancing or accelerating the sustainability progress of, especially of SME. And you talked about that very quickly in your speech, which was critical in your message, But how competitive is our SME compared to the regional economy? When we talk about ASEAN, we're talking about freer trade, less barriers between the ASEAN trade. We work as an economy, bigger population pool, bigger demand for market, both internally for and external consumption. But then remains the competitiveness of our SME, because then talks about the quality of our SME corporations. So what are the government steps that are being taken to address not just sustainability, but ensuring that our SME remain competitive in the space of sustainability?
One, I think we have, basically, fundamentally, we are changing our economic model, and that's not an easy feat. Previously, how Malaysia has been competitive is basically to be a low-cost, export-driven economy. Right? We have a small market, and most countries started like that. When you talk about China, even Singapore, Taiwan, Korea, Japan. The challenge for us is that we were stuck for a long time. Yeah, so we were still expecting to compete on cost. But now we have Vietnam, we have Indonesia, we have even Cambodia coming up. So how do we compete when we should not compete on cost anymore? So that's why once we make the, last time, for example, I know it was quite controversial when we retargeted electric subsidies, because it just did not make sense to have a blanket subsidy for everyone. And similarly with diesel. I know it's not easy, even though SMEs may be directly or indirectly affected, but we just have to make that transition. The idea is what? The idea is that then we make the leap towards a higher value economy and a greener economy. And that's why things like we are working on the progressive wage. Again, I know for SMEs you hear wage, you get a bit scared, right? But let's face it again, I mean, wage is a major challenge in retaining talent here. Why do we have Malaysians driving garbage trucks in Singapore, but not doing it here? It's a wage issue, right? So I think we need then to look at that, and progressive wage is not a minimum wage. Minimum wage is compulsory, it's a floor, but we have progressive wage, which is, it's aspirational and with government support and all that in order to achieve that. So that is what we are doing. At the same time, of course, as mentioned, we have the GTFS, the Green Technology Financing Scheme, and then we have GITA and GITE, the various tax incentives that are there. And I think that basically is to push through all these changes for the SMEs. And, through the various schemes, you can get up to 60 to 80% guarantees on green components. I think that is something, because this can be a huge cost factor. And another part is also, we are also looking at things in order to promote things through these exemptions or incentives for battery storage, EV vehicles, to make it more competitive, right? So I think that is our support for the SMEs, and now we are working on Budget 2025, and we are trying to push more together with MITI and the Ministry of Economy for SMEs.
All right. I see that time's up, got 2 minutes, but there's 5 questions about the same topic, and I'm going to ask you this, okay. It's about Malaysian tigers. You guys love Malaysian tigers because there's 5 questions on Malaysian tigers. And apparently there were 2 Malaysian tigers that found dead recently. And obviously there's concern about the convergence of how we are expanding our economy, at the same time trying to protect. And as you talked about biodiversity and where we rank that. So what are the steps the Malaysian government is taking, or the concern here is that we're going to actually end up losing a lot of our endangered species?
Yeah, it's an unfortunate news because we have very little, estimate to be less than 150 left in the wild. Tigers, yep, Malayan tigers. What the government has done, for example, since 2019, we have this thing called the ecological fiscal transfer. Basically, it's government money, federal government money, that is distributed to the state governments based on the forests that they have and also what they're doing to protect it. So it's quantity and quality. And we have distributed, it started with only 60 million a year in 2019. PM increased it to 150 million for 2023, and this year it's 200 million ringgit. And we had, and you can't spend it on a new car or new building, cannot, right? It's strictly for conservation, to expand protected forests, to increase officers or whatever. Very specific. Very specific for conservation. So there were some of the smaller states, right? They were saying, oh, we don't know what to do with the money because it's so much, right? So that has been happening. And at the same time, we are working towards putting the more element on quality, not just quantity, right? So if you're not protecting enough, then you may lose those things. That's one. 2 is we've also had this thing called community rangers, which is, we employ military veterans. These are military, a lot of the armed forces at 40 years old, non-commissioned officers, they are retired. A lot of them normally drive cabs or just do their own business, and they're struggling to meet ends meet. So now we employ military veterans, police veterans, the Orang Asli, they're the biggest component of this program, and other local community members. From, I think we started with 1,000, this year it will be 2,000 people. The good news with regards to this is the element of poaching has gone down tremendously. It has helped our permanent rangers to do the work. And there are other NGO efforts. I think Sam Darby is working, and Maybank is helping with regards to the Orang Asli rangers on their own in Royal Belum and all that. I think what we need to do, and we are trying to work hard, is to restore the central forest spine. So in the middle of Semenanjung, you have a forest. Banjaran Titiwangsa, basically, all the way down to Johor. But it has been fragmented, right? So what we are trying to do is, at the very least, we've succeeded, for example, in Sabah, with regards to the pygmy elephants, for the palm oil plantation, actually created a wildlife corridor. So they don't kacau the palm oil plantations anymore, but they use the wildlife corridor. Here, we are trying to start to restore. There has been some efforts, but not enough, to create, all the way from North Johor to the border of Thailand. There are still some fragmented areas that we need to restore, and that's where we find these cases of tigers, going in accidents and whatnot. So that will take a longer time, but it's an ongoing effort.
All right. So time's is up. A few more questions, but maybe I'll share the questions later with you. As we conclude this session, I would like to thank and extend our deepest gratitude to YB for sharing your valuable insights and also being very honest and being very direct in some of these responses. And your commitment and vision is truly inspiring, and in terms of what we can do for the government, help the government to do this better for Malaysia, for all Malaysians. So with those words, I'd like to thank MIM for inviting us, and thank everyone for your questions, and thank you YB again.
Please remain on stage, Yang Berhormat and Associate Professor Ganesh. Thank you, Yang Berhormat Nik Nazmi bin Nik Ahmad and Associate Professor Ganesh Nadarajah for the wonderful and insightful sharing. As we conclude this session, I would like to invite Yang Berbahagia, Dato' Yoh Soo Min, MIM Court of Emeritus Fellow, accompanied by Mr. Kabinesh Eliatambi, CEO of MIM, to the stage for the plaque presentation.